Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and I love haunted house horror. So that is why for today's vlog, I am going to be reading 3 brand new release horror books that feature haunted houses. I have been highly anticipating all 3 of these haunted house stories. I think they're each going to bring a very different spin on the haunted house tropes that I tend to love. So let's go ahead and introduce the books and then get on to the reading vlog. The first book I have on the TBR is Bochica by Carolina Flórez-Cerchiaro, and this one is for fans of Mexican Gothic and The Shining, which I absolutely am a fan of both of those. It's about a young woman. It takes place in 1920s Colombia, I believe. Yes, 1923 Colombia, and she has to return to her family home where horrible things happened to her and her family. It's been converted into a luxury hotel, and she has to confront her past there. The next book that I have on the TBR is We Live Here Now by Sarah Pinborough. This is from an author known for her thriller books like Behind Her Eyes, so I'm really curious about this one, if it's going to feel more horror or thriller. But this is about a couple who moves to an isolated farmhouse and weird things start happening. The wife is seeing all of these weird things, the husband not so much. It's causing strife in their relationship, and of course, as spooky things keep amping up and happening, it could also spell disaster for them as well. And then last but not least, we have The Manor of Dreams by Christina Lee. This is a Southern California Gothic about a house that used to be owned by a starlet, a Hollywood starlet, and there are 2 different families that are fighting for inheritance of this house, and this house may hold some secrets of its own, some dark pasts, some dark mysteries. Some of those secrets might include a haunting, and this one is also covering how much the American dream costs and what we might have to give up to obtain it. So I am so excited for all 3 of these books. I love a haunted house horror, so I'm feeling very optimistic about this vlog. So let's just dive into the first book. So I am about 50% of the way through Bochica, and unfortunately I am not really loving this one, which is definitely a bummer based on the comp titles and synopsis, because I had a good feeling about it, but it's just not working for me in a lot of ways. So this follows our main character Antonia, and this is a historical Gothic. It takes place in the 1930s in Colombia. Antonia is a school teacher, and she is taking care of her father, who for a lot of reasons in their family's past is no longer really able to take care of himself. He needs another adult to kind of monitor things and make sure he's doing okay. 10 years before the start of this story, they actually moved into their dream home, Antonia and both of her parents. Her father's an architect and built this beautiful home, as you can see on the cover. This home that was like built into a cliffside right next to a waterfall. Absolutely gorgeous. However, in that house, her mother ends up dying. Antonia has a lot of grief and a lot of unanswered questions about her mother's death. She's grappling with the loss of a parental figure, obviously, but also the situations surrounding her mother's death are very hazy, very cloudy. How she died, it could have been she died by accident, suicide, or potentially someone else could have had a hand in it. So these questions have really been plaguing Antonia and her father, who is going through a depressive episode after her mother's death, and he actually started a fire that almost burnt down the house with the rest of the family inside it because of his grief. So they fled the house, and now Antonia is trying to pick up the pieces. Her father is not the man he used to be, and her mother is tragically gone. However, they get invited to the grand opening of a hotel, and that hotel is actually their former home. They've rented out their former home to someone who turned it into a luxury hotel. Antonia and her father decide to go against doctors' better judgment because Antonia especially really wants to close this chapter of her life. There's a lot of unanswered questions about her mother's death, and she wants to see if she can get some closure by attending this event. So we'll start with the positives. This has a very heavily Gothic atmosphere. The author is very much concentrating on building up a beautiful house, which is now a hotel, and just the atmosphere surrounding not even the house, but the outside, the surroundings, even places like Antonia's place of work, which is a Catholic school for girls. All of that is really dripping with ambiance and Gothic flair. So the book's atmosphere, the Gothic vibe, the Gothic setting is really there. However, I think this book needs to be a whole lot longer. It's not even 300 pages, and I just feel like, especially for a Gothic, we really need to take that time, because as you're building up this very slow, this very creeping and heavy atmosphere, you also need the plot to go at that same pace, and the plot feels very whiplash. There are a lot of scenes that kind of just jump from one to the other without like a proper transition, and I just think overall this book needs more time to let the ideas and the plot and the ambiance really breathe. A lot of the character conversations feel very much like they're propelling forward the plot, so a lot of the conversations feel a little stilted and not quite like natural conversations. There's a lot of exposition dumping within the character interactions, which makes it not really feel very authentically like real interactions that people would have. And I think this book could have benefited from multiple timelines. We have the one timeline in the 1930s as Antonia and her father are visiting this new hotel. The only time we are seeing Antonia and her parents living inside the house are in flashbacks, and I think those should have been fleshed out and been in their own chapters, because right now we'll get the flashbacks, but it'll be like Antonia is talking to someone, or Antonia sees something that reminds her of something that happened in her past, and then she'll remember the thing that happened in the past, and we'll get like 2 to 3 pages of that flashback. But for me as the reader, it's a little bit anxiety inducing, because as we're reading that flashback, Antonia is still stuck in that conversation looking at whatever she saw, so it just feels like weird. It almost feels like everything has been paused in the main timeline to visit those flashbacks, and I just think like it would have been a little bit better had we had 2 timelines, one in the present, which is the 1930s, and then one in the 1920s, flipping back and forth between the two. So yeah, I think this one is just going to be a little bit too fast for me. I'm not giving up hope yet. The latter 50% could really wow me, but for right now, this isn't really meeting my expectations, especially with the comp titles being Mexican Gothic and The Shining. This just really is not meeting the creep factor or even the story composition of either of those. So here's hoping the next 50% goes a little bit better for me. I hope it slows down and really concentrates on building up that plot alongside that excellent ambiance. Good morning vlog. So I finished Bochica last night, and unfortunately this just ended up being a miss for me. I was really excited with both the comp titles for this one and the actual synopsis, and it never got to that level where I was so invested in really loving this one. The atmosphere was excellent, especially in the beginning of the book, but even though atmosphere is so important to a Gothic horror novel, it needs more than that to carry the narrative. I just wish that this one would have been a little bit longer and we really would have taken our time with the events, because if I were to tell you all the events that happened in this book and we were to have a conversation about this book and the things that happened and the twists, it would be really exciting and interesting information. And that's what's a bummer about this one, is that what is in here is interesting. However, a lot of this, especially towards the end, feels very rushed, and and a lot of the action is just told through dialogue. It's very dialogue heavy, and it kind of just feels at parts like you were just being told the information. I never felt immersed in this story. A really good book for me. I'm reading it, I'm there with the character, I can see everything in my mind. This book, I felt very aware that I was reading a book and that I was reading like words on a page. So it was just missing that immersion for me. I just wish this would have been longer, it would have taken its time and just really explored the Gothic hotel. So unfortunately, this was just a miss for me. I really appreciated the Colombian culture and folklore in here. I thought those were really interesting aspects, but unfortunately just the writing and the storytelling style fell very, very flat for me. So unfortunately, first book, a little bit of a miss in this vlog. We are moving on to another book, and I've actually read from this author and enjoyed the books, so hopefully this goes better. But I'll be reading We Live Here Now by Sarah Pinborough. This is an author that I have read her thrillers. This is supposed to be more in the horror genre than the thriller genre, so I'm quite interested to see how this author is going to move from one genre to the other. Hopefully I like this one just as much as I liked her thrillers in the past, so let's get to reading. So I am now about 20% of the way through We Live Here Now, and this is a pretty fun time so far. It's a pretty basic haunted house premise, but you don't always need to reinvent the wheel, and it's a speedy time that is a lot of fun for me so far. So we are following main characters Emily and Freddie. They are a couple. They have some issues in their marriage, and they move to a house in the middle of the English countryside, hoping that this will be a brand new fresh start for them and their marriage. Emily is actually recovering from a near-death experience where she had a injury that caused sepsis, and that sepsis caused her to go into a coma, so she is still recovering from that. It seems like their marriage was on pretty shaky grounds before that happened, as both Emily and Freddie, you get both of their point of views. They're both harboring secrets against the other one that they don't want the other one to find out. So you're really curious as to what each of them are hiding from the other. You have some ideas at this point in the story, but you still want to find out those details. And then as they move to this house, Emily starts seeing things, hearing things, thinks that there might be a presence in this house. However, she is not the most reliable narrator. She admits this to herself. She's a reliable person. However, sepsis, there is like a condition like post-sepsis syndrome, and some of those side effects, including the medication that she has to take and all of that. Some of those side effects include insomnia, include very vivid nightmares, and include audio and visual hallucinations. So as these things are happening, she starts to worry that potentially they could just be symptoms from this post-sepsis syndrome. Also, she spends a lot more time in the house. Her husband is out doing his job during the day, and she is at home, and so she has a lot more time to be alone with her thoughts, of be alone with the house. But she feels like something's not right. Her husband's not really believing her, and this house has a lot of problems. The couple has a lot of problems, and it's all going to come to a head. So very, very stereotypical kind of haunted house premise. People move into a house, they have these issues before moving into the house, and then the houses, like paranormal hauntings, kind of exacerbate those issues. So I'm having fun with this one. This is definitely feels more horror than thriller, but the chapters are thriller paced, so I feel like this one is going to be one where I'll just fly through it. So far so good. I'm enjoying my time. I'm gonna go get to reading. So I finished We Live Here Now, and overall this was a fast-paced, fun time. This definitely had some very thriller-esque twists and turns by the end. The beginning, like I had mentioned, it starts out kind of stereotypical, kind of like a lot of haunted house stories, but the reveals and revelations and the nature of the haunting and what is going on in this house had some really fun reveals, and I did have a good time with this one. This is going to be a book where all of the main characters are very unlikable. Emily and Freddie have their problems from the start of this book, and we do spend more time in Emily's point of view than we do Freddie's, and I think that makes her just a touch more sympathetic than he is, but they're very unlikable. All of the main characters, a lot of the side characters, very unlikable, very flawed, and I thought it worked for this one. Because this one was so fast-paced, I didn't mind that the characters weren't likable, but just a heads up, if you go into this one and you need a likable character, probably not the book for you, because this couple is very, very insufferable. There's no point like that you feel like, oh, they're like a good couple for each other. It's just from the jump, they both have their own things going on, and then their dynamic as a couple is not great as well. But I do think that's part of the structure of the story, is examining a couple that's unraveling inside of a situation that is really speeding up that process. So I had a fun time with this one. I would say this is probably horror, but it does have the pacing of a thriller. It's got short chapters, it's very speedy. In a lot of ways, it's kind of formatted like structurally like a thriller, so I feel like you could make an argument for either of those genres there. But I had a fun time, so now we're moving on to the third and final book in this vlog, and that would be The Manor of Dreams by Christina Lee. And this one is going to be slower paced than the book that I just read. It's a twisty and enthralling Southern California Gothic about the secrets lying in wait in the crumbling mansion of a former Hollywood starlet and the intertwined fates of two Chinese American families fighting to inherit it. So I think this one's just going to be a lot slower of a pace. I'm kind of curious about this one. I thought it was horror. My library has it genre tagged as a mystery, so I think with those Gothic elements, I'm not really sure totally what to expect from this one, but I'm excited. Hey friends, so I am about 50% of the way through The Manor of Dreams, and I'm really enjoying this one so far. This is definitely a very interesting blend of a multi-generational family saga, family drama, and a haunted house book, and I am really enjoying my experience with it so far. So at the beginning of this book, we find out that Vivian Yin is dead, and she made history back in the 80s by being the first Chinese actress to win an Oscar. She was a movie star and did a lot of great movies, good work, and then at the height of her career, she disappeared, became a recluse, and was kind of taken out of the Hollywood narrative. Now, present day, she is dead, and her family is gathering at her house, at her manor, to hear her will. Vivian is survived by 2 daughters and a granddaughter, and this reading of the will does not go as planned because Vivian actually deeds the house to the daughter of her former housekeepers instead of her family members. This causes a big fuss, a big deal. There's a lot of fight, a lot of conflict about this, some concerns as to whether or not she was in sound mind when she did this. So these two families make a pact as they're trying to figure out this hotly contested will and figure out why it was changed at the last minute as well. They are all staying in this house and waiting for the will to be contested. So this one is actually a dual timeline, and we're following the two families as they are staying in this house, awaiting the results of that and experiencing some things inside the house. And then we're also getting Vivian's point of view as she is this up and coming starlet in the 70s and the 80s. So this one does follow a lot of people. We're following Vivian, but then in the present day, we follow both of her daughters wives, we follow the woman she's willed the house to, and we follow the daughters of the daughters and the woman that she has given the house to. So there are a lot of POVs, there are a lot of characters to keep track of. So the first like 2 chapters, you're really trying to figure out who is who belongs to who, and then once you do that, they're very, very distinct characters, and even though there are a lot of them to follow, I think it's pretty easy to tell them apart from each other. They all have very distinct personalities, and what's interesting about this one is that the people that are all in Vivian's house, they are all being haunted by the past and also some paranormal activity that's happening inside the house. So I do really like how this one is playing on what haunted, what the meaning of the word haunting means, because there are a lot of things that are buried in the past of especially Vivian as the grandmother, and then the mother when we are following Madeline and she's trying to figure her mother Lucille out. Lucille is kind of withholding and hides a lot about the family history. That's just the way that she was raised though by Vivian. So we're kind of exploring grief and trauma and a lot of family history, family secrets staying buried, and the importance of talking about your family history and not shying away from difficult topics within that history. So I really like this. There are some creepy moments. There are some creepy moments in this house, so don't think from that description that the haunting is all a metaphor, because there's something going on in this house. So I'm really enjoying this blend of family drama and then also a paranormal haunting. So I think I'm gonna finish this one up today. It's not a traditionally fast-paced story. It's very character driven, but I'm enjoying it so much that I could just see myself getting really lost in the latter 50% of this book. So I finished The Manor of Dreams, and overall I did really enjoy this one. I definitely would say kind of adjust your expectations, because this is equally as much a family drama as it is a haunted house story, and the beginning and the end had a lot of paranormal. I wish the middle would have had more paranormal elements, but that's just a small gripe. I really enjoyed what this book did. This book was also very sapphic, and not only because of that, but because of the different tones and also everything that was explored within this book. If you liked the Mike Flanagan show, The Haunting of Bly Manor, which I absolutely love. I love Mike Flanagan, but if you liked that, because that one, it had some scares, but it also had some very deep emotional moments and explorations as well. If you were a fan of that show, I think you would really enjoy this one. I had a good time. The characters were very, very nuanced. It felt like there are some characters in here that, especially at the beginning, are very unlikable, and then you get to see what happened to them in their life and their traumas, and maybe why they respond a different way than what you would imagine when they're put in a situation based on traumas and similar situations from their past. Not saying that at the end of the novel everyone turns out likable and great, but I think the nuance in here of exploring some very flawed people, very flawed characters, I thought this was pretty good. So overall, I did have a good time with this vlog. I would say, I mean, there was one book that I didn't like, Bochica. Unfortunately, it just didn't really work for me. The idea for this one was really stellar, but unfortunately, the writing almost felt like a first draft. It felt a little rushed and incomplete, but the other 2 books that I enjoyed, of course, I just talked about The Manor of Dreams. I think this is a very good ghost story that has both ghosts are real and paranormal, and they're creeping around corners and all of that, and also exploring a haunting that we're haunted by our pasts and the things that have happened to us. And then I think the one that is like the most traditionally, if you're thinking of a haunted house horror, We Live Here Now, I think is the one that's going to accomplish that the best. This one definitely had those vibes of a couple moves into a house and there's something wrong with the house house. Really speedy, very fast-paced, unlikable characters, but for the situation that they're in, I don't think it matters too much. I think that adds a lot to the story. So that is going to be the end of this vlog. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a like, leave a comment down below. Let me know what's your favorite haunted house horror, or what's a good haunted house book that you've read recently. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!